Welcome, everyone. We're here today to discuss securing your future, migrating applications and data to Azure VMware Solution. I'm Scott Gruenemeier, a Principal Technical Specialist in our state and local government business, and with me today is Joe Sarabia.
Hi, everyone. I am part of the AVS product group. I am a Principal TPM Manager, leading a team and one of the leads working on this product for the last 4 years or so.
We work with lots of customers in our day-to-day business, and we're seeing more and more customers moving their workloads into Azure, and especially VMware customers. They have licensing concerns, their data centers may be expiring or end of life, software's end of support, urgent capacity needs, security threats, need to avoid software or hardware refreshes, budget constraints, and or extend scale, or even better yet, just the hope to take advantage of all the benefits in the cloud, like AI and the modernization capabilities that are there. Today, a lot of organizations have most of their computing in VMware on premises today, and they have existing VMware skill sets and existing VMware licenses. But we can take those VMware workloads and move them very easily into Azure. And you can get a lot of benefits from doing so. We can provide price protection. We can give you business and IT agility to be able to modernize your workloads. We can set up global scale and elasticity so that you can scale your business in and out as needed and pay for on demand. We can increase your security and resiliency, providing disaster recovery and business continuity across worldwide workloads. And we give you ability to have your data in proximity to AI services so that you can take better advantage of them moving forward. We are a platform for developer innovation. And on top of all this, we sustainably reduce carbon and improve the environment. So you might be thinking to yourself, how do I get into the cloud? This seems like it could be a daunting challenge, but really we've worked with thousands of customers across the last several years to really kind of make this easy for you. We call it migrate to modernize. So we can move your VMware workloads as is today into the cloud. We get you predictable pricing and save on your licensing. And then we set you up with the ability to start modernizing because you're next door to all the services that you can innovate with, like Azure OpenAI and other modernization services. And from that, you can retire technical debt, free up resources to focus on innovation. And for the main reason we're here today, we improve your cybersecurity standing. With the Azure VMware Solution, it's the fastest path to the cloud because we're really taking your VMware skills and implementation today and moving it into the cloud. So training your people is fast. Migrations are really quick. Typically, we can move thousands of virtual machines in a month, and we can achieve better performance and security through those migrations and leverage your existing Microsoft licenses. So what you get with Azure VMware Solution is the fastest migration option to the cloud. You can migrate your workloads as is and then refactor and modernize them once they're up in the cloud. We have support from expert migration partners and people such as myself who work with customers every day. And your folks get to use the familiar VMware tech stack, but get to also learn new skills in Azure. We include the licensing with vSphere, vSAN, NSXT, and HCX, and you can continue to leverage your existing VMware expertise. One of the best parts about Azure VMware Solution is that it's a first-party service developed, engineered, and supported at Microsoft by excellent engineers like Joe Sarabia. We do the support, the licensing, and billing, and we treat it as a first-class service just like the rest of our Azure services. You can manage your VMware resources through the Azure portal, and you can add capacity in mere minutes. So instead of having to get a quote from a hardware reseller and then issue a purchase order and wait for arrival and rack and stack and integrate, within 30 minutes, you can have additional capacity to extend your environment. So you as the customer get to migrate to the cloud quickly without having to refactor your existing operations. We can do so using VMware's hybrid cloud extension, HCX tool, to migrate thousands of machines in a month. And what we're really doing here is we're reducing your resource utilization from on-premises to the cloud. Consistently, when we migrate customers from VMware on-premises to Azure VMware Solution in the cloud, customers see an increase in available time to direct staff to higher value services. They see a lower in their total cost of operations, and again, ability to increase security and have access to modernization solutions. All right, so when you move into the cloud, we want to make sure you're moving securely. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we're setting up a secure landing zone. And what that means is that we're setting up secure networking between all of your locations on premises and all of your regions that you're utilizing in the cloud. So we realize that customers have different needs. They may need to be in global regions across all of Azure, or they might just need one or two regions for business continuity and disaster recovery capabilities. But regardless of what those requirements are, we're going to work with you to build them securely. One of the main ways we do that is by utilizing express route circuits, which is private cloud accessibility from your on-premises into our cloud network, which isolates your traffic to just your private network, so that you're really just extending your on-premises private network into the cloud and nobody else has access to that. Now, the main thing that we're going to be having up there is firewalls to be able to secure that. We have Azure Firewall, which is a great solution, or you can choose your own firewall vendor and bring their solution to play here as well. Now, what we typically like to do is set up multiple express routes with multiple hubs in multiple regions and mesh the solution together so that if any single point fails, we still have access to your workloads and solutions in a business continuity situation, so that you can do things like upgrade a solution in one region and then switch the traffic over to another region and then upgrade that. Or monitor security and operations across all of your workloads, across all of your regions in Azure. Another place that we can offer a lot of assistance here is by providing web application firewalls and global load balancing using our product called Azure Front Door. It'll do caching of static content, typical web application firewall, bot detection, bot prevention, cross-site scripting prevention, and then allow you to run that traffic through the firewall. You can decrypt it at that point, inspect it, re-encrypt it, and send it on to its destination, which could be an Azure VMware solution. AVS itself has NSXT for doing micro-segmentation in there so that you can utilize the best of both worlds with both Azure and VMware. Now, we're building all this with our zero trust approach to security. That includes identity, endpoints, data, apps, infrastructure, networking, and we build that into AVS itself. To hear more about that, we have Joe.
All right, thank you so much, Scott. There's really three things when we construct this platform and we look at how we expand it and add new features to it. And that is we want to verify explicitly so that we're always authenticating, authorizing based on these characteristics. We want to use least privileged access. That is, even in construction and behind the scenes in the platform for things you don't see, we want to use least privileged access that will give us just-in-time access to perform our platform operations and just enough access so that we can adapt based on the work that we need to perform. Then also, zero trust assumes breach. And really what this means is we focus on minimizing our blast radius using a combination of technologies to accomplish security across those dimensions that Scott mentioned. Security is very important to Microsoft, and we appreciate and value your trust with your data inside of AVS. That's why it's important for us to use these principles in how we develop our platform. So with that, I would like to get into a little more detail to talk about how we secure applications and data and focus on a few of the features that we have in Azure VMware Solution that facilitate your ability to do that. So we're going to start with data at rest encryption. We hear from a lot of our customers, many of which in regulated industries like financial service, government, healthcare, and others, that they need to have control over the encryption of their data at rest. Now, the good news is we provide a few different options for you to accomplish that today that allow you to protect your sensitive data. We talk here about vSAN level encryption. And this is really the ability to encrypt an entire data store if you elect to do so. This is on by default. And we give some options on how you perform that. You can either use a Microsoft managed key. This is how it works by default. But if you say, look, Microsoft, I don't want you to have access to the keys that can encrypt and decrypt my data, fantastic. We also provide customer managed keys that allow you to encrypt that data store, a very popular feature with many of our customers. Also, currently in preview, we provide VM level encryption through VTPM. And this gives you per VM level encryption, and it's accomplished through the application of a storage policy where there's one encryption key per VM, and this provides you some enhanced isolation if you need it. This is a use case that is popular with customers doing things such as VDI and who want Windows 11 as part of their VDI or Horizon workspace deployment. We talked a little bit about customer managed keys, so this is a little bit more detail about how that works, where we have options for like a system assigned managed identity or a user assigned managed identity. And really the guiding principle behind this is to give customers choice based on their use case and what works best for them. On the right-hand side, what we're showing here is you can mix and match these in a manner that makes sense for you to do. If I want some SDDCs that have a system assigned identity and others that have user assigned identity, fantastic. At the end of the day, that's something that we provide the flexibility for you to do. At the end of the day, we use Azure Key Vault or AKV to store these things and provide access to broker security for these keys and manage them appropriately. And another thing that we provide is data in transit encryption for certain operations. And the primary way that we accomplish that is through signed certificate. AVS signed certificates is a feature that we've had in the platform for maybe the last year and a half or so. And what it does is we provide signed certificates for the operation of the platform, essentially the management components, such as the vSphere client, NSX, and so on. Now, where this is important is we get a lot of customers that when they transition from an on-premise environment, of course, they care about things like signed certificates and the life cycle of those certificates. So let's talk a little bit about how this works. Now, some of the benefits of this is that it is a zero-touch rotation. So we sign the certificates that we supply to management components, and then we rotate those out before they expire. So it's a value add of the platform that allows you to benefit from this capability. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what it is and what it is not, because we get this question sometimes, is often in an on-premises environment, customers are accustomed to providing their own CA and their own signed certificates signed by their CA and then importing that into their environment so they have a signed certificate for, say, vSphere client access. What we've done in Azure VMware Solution is slightly different, is these signed certificates, they are signed by a CA, but it's an Azure managed CA. And we do not intend at this point to bring to market the capability for customers to bring their own signed certificates. I get that question a lot, so I want to address it. And the reason is because we have our own management components that need to integrate with these SCDCs and environments. And we don't want to take a dependency on the availability of a customer's CA and trust that we would need to do that might interfere with our ability to deliver the SLA that we've promised to you. So for that reason, we provide signed certificates, but they are from this Azure Certificate Authority, this Azure Managed Certificate Authority. But it does give you some of these benefits. It allows us to encrypt data in transit when we're working with our management components. And as mentioned, zero-touch rotation. So it's not something that you need to be concerned with. It's part of the platform and what we provide to you as a customer. All right, now that we've talked a little bit about some of the features and capabilities and how we use that to secure your data, I want to spend a little bit more time talking about designing for security. And specifically, I want to talk about role-based access control in Azure VMware Solution and how things work a little bit differently and what you need to think about compared to how you may be operating and designing for security in your on-premises environments today with VMware Solutions. All right. This is just the refresh slide to talk about how permissions work in vSphere. And you have a collection of privileges that comprise a role. You can assign this role to some object in vSphere, which could be something like the VM, or it could be top level global permission, or maybe top level like a container such as vCenter itself, or maybe a grouping of folders, whatever makes sense for you. And the permission is really also assigned, it is assigned to a user or a group. So you have this role combined with the user or group, add an object, and that's how you get access to do things. The reason I'm talking about this here is because we have a really specific role that we use in Azure VMware Solution called Cloud Admin. But otherwise, it works the same. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about what that is. Over on the left here, I've just shown a summary of basically what you would see privilege-wise if you were looking at a configuration of a role in the vSphere client. And then up above, that's just an API output of those same things. So same thing displayed two different ways, essentially. But just a little refresher on privileges before we get more into the Cloud Admin role. Okay, so I think this is really the important slide to understand from a security design perspective when you're looking at RBAC through the lens of vSphere and the vSphere client. So let me explain what's going on here with this slide. I'll start on the right-hand portion where there's these two roles. One is administrator and one is cloud admin. And what I want to emphasize here really is just that the cloud admin is a subset of privileges that are in the regular administrator role. So if, for example, you're doing things in your on-premise environment today and you're using an administrator role, this is basically, all the privileges. At the time that I took the screenshot, there may be a few more by now, but the message is really that cloud admin has some reduced set of privileges. Why do we do that? We do that to accomplish some of the things that Scott was talking about earlier. So he talked about in a matter of tens of minutes, you can get, say, a new host into your cluster, and you don't have to deal with procurement and racking and stacking and all these things. We maintain a separate pool of capacity that facilitates your ability to do that. We also have a feature called automated host replacement. And what automated host replacement does is it will detect failures and other conditions in your private cloud. And if we detect that the host has become unhealthy, we'll add a new one and then take the old one out so we can
Wait a second, Joe. Let me get this straight. So if a customer is running and then we detect an issue with one of their hosts, do they have to buy the other host first, or do we just do that for them as part of the service?
It's for them as part of the service. It's all automatic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really a fantastic benefit because I was a VI admin myself, and I remember having to keep some stuff off on the side and bits and pieces of my server. But even if I was quick about it, it still would take me typically like a few hours if I was in a situation where I'm partial hardware replacement. A whole host, there were times where I would have cold hosts sitting in a rack somewhere, but there's still a little bit I had to do to connect it together, right? So yeah, so in this case, you don't have to do any of that anymore. So if you're doing that in your on-premise environment today, this is some of the customer value prop, is that's done in tens of minutes. Now, to tie that back to the message of the slide here, in order to do that, that means there's certain things we don't allow you to do. And that's what Cloud Admin is about, right? We treat your cluster and the hosts as a managed entity. And so to be able to do cool things like automated host replacement, AHR, we don't want customers to take actions that might interfere with that operation. And so that's really what that delta is between the number of privileges between an administrator and cloud admin. We treat that cluster as, basically a managed resource. Now, the problem that we run into is that there are some privileges in vSphere that allow you to do a lot of different operations. And unfortunately for us, as a provider, is one of those is like this edit cluster privilege, right? And this is the thing that allows you to do a lot of the really cool stuff that you love as a customer of vSphere on premises. Things like DRS, add remove hosts, right? So we don't want you to do that because it could interfere with the operation of the service and our ability to deliver the SLA. And so that's why these things exist. So that's what this kind of like dotted line is showing in the diagram here, is there is this point of demarcation where you can't do those things, and it's done by the platform for you to provide this kind of value that we're talking about. So below that dotted line, basically, The highest you can go, that's kind of the light blue cloud admin, like that is the most privileged role that you have inside of AVS. And this bit about the self-service customer role, custom roles, is to say that if you want some lower privileged role, like less than cloud admin, you can still do that too, like you always did on premise. And so, what this really means is for the core VI admins, they tend to use cloud admin for their day-to-day. That's like the replacement in AVS for administrator. But often your application owners, for example, who have access to VMs, you might have created some custom role for them, only allowing them to do a few things, like maybe stop, restart the VM, and connect to the console. Those are patterns that still work for you inside of AVS. And when you're doing those things, you do it in vSphere client. So if I want to go create a custom role, I go to the vSphere client, and I do the same thing I've always done on premise. Now, I do want to point out here, if you are using custom roles or want to create a custom role, we always recommend that you clone the cloud admin role as a starting point and remove the privileges that you don't want that role to have. Why am I suggesting that? Why not just create your own role from scratch because you know what you're doing? Well, unfortunately, vSphere will allow you to add privileges that you can't use in some circumstances. By that, I mean you can specify a privilege that isn't part of cloud admin. It lets you create the role, but then when you go try to apply it, it's not going to work, basically. So that's why we say start with cloud admin and just reduce the privilege set to what you want. Okay, you know that pattern. You've used it before. Nothing new here. It's the same way it's always worked in vSphere. Okay, what if you need to do something more privileged than cloud admin? And that's what we're displaying here in run command. So what Scott was talking about is earlier, he mentioned something about we manage some of your resources in the Azure portal. So run command is really about brokering higher privileged execution or higher privileged operations in your private cloud in a secure fashion. Because we understand that there are times where you want to do things that maybe wouldn't impact SLA, but are important to your operations. So we talked about a sample of this earlier. The edit cluster privilege, remember? It lets people do a lot of things. And some of those we care about for things like AHR as discussed. Some things we want you to be able to do, but the privileges provided by VMware just aren't granular enough. And so that's where we use something like a run command to facilitate those capabilities. Or in special cases, we've built some functions directly into the Azure portal. So an example of that would be placement policies. That is an AVS feature that's been around since pretty early on. And this is our way to do affinity and anti-affinity rules, because we can't give you that granularity in cloud admin, but we've provided it in the portal. There's other things that run command allows you to do, and these are other items that are important to the operation of your environment. Another great one is storage profiles. So if you want to create a new storage profile or change a storage profile, again, this is another privilege. It's not very granular by default in what we get out of the box from vSphere. So basically what we do is we provide this run command to give you as much operational parity as we can in Azure compared to how you operate on premises. And in fact, every quarter or so, we're monitoring what customers are doing, and we're looking for things where we say, hey, we've seen customers try to do this, either through a support request or through feedback from account teams, folks like Scott, and we'll say, oh, it would really make a customer's life easier if they could do this privileged command, inside of run command. And so really that's what it's there for, and you execute run command from the Azure portal. There's another thing that we use run command for that's very important. This is basically our integration point for third-party ISVs, because there's some times where you have tooling that you want to continue using that you use on premises and you want to use it in Azure. And sometimes that tooling, say from a backup vendor, for example, will integrate into the vSphere client. That's a higher privileged thing than exists in Cloud Admin. So we broker that through run command. So it's a way to allow you to achieve or maintain as much operational parity for day two operations as possible, as well as integrate tools. Ultimately, the goal here is we want to meet you where you're at and provide as consistent an experience as we can while maintaining SLAs that we're committed to and those cool features like automated host replacement. Now that we've talked a little bit about role-based access control and some of those considerations, I do want to talk more about what this looks like for a specific use case. So let's talk about identity. So how can I integrate my AVS environment into known identity patterns, say like Active Directory? We have a lot of customers that have Active Directory on premises today. And so when they migrate into Azure and start using AVS, they want to be able to integrate Active Directory so that we can do some of the things we were just talking about, right? We start out with just a cloud admin role and a cloud admin user. But a cloud admin user is really like a break glass kind of user account. It's not something you want to use every day. You don't want to share it, obviously, because you want to have some sort of distinction around who's doing what. Use the principle of least privilege, separation of roles, all that security goodness. And so we can achieve that by integrating with Active Directory. So this is a sample pattern of something that we see customers using today. Scott was talking about how we wire Azure and AVS together. And so what we're showing here is there's different patterns. This is just one of them, is an Active Directory service running on a VM living somewhere inside of Azure. We've got the connectivity that Scott was describing earlier back to AVS. And what this is showing is this is basically like a communication path that you can use to integrate that Active Directory and the identity for all your users into things like VMware NSX and vCenter Server so that you can do role-based access control inside of both of those environments. The point I want to drive home is that what I'm showing is the Azure portal now. And so this is what run command looks like. It's part of the operations section of your private cloud. So this is basically a view of the portal where I have logged in and I have accessed this Contoso West US SDDC private cloud. And then when you click on run command, you get these options here. Now you may be looking at this and saying to yourself, hey, this formatting looks familiar. These kind of look like commandlets. It's exactly that. I had a PowerShell icon on a previous slide that we didn't talk about too much. But part of how this works is using PowerShell. And so what we do is we have our own module that we provide, the Microsoft.avs.management module, and it has these run command commandlets inside of there that allow you to perform these day two operations. And the thing that I'm highlighting here is identity config, right? Is I go through this process of I've got AVS and I've got it wired, but all I have is this cloud admin. How do I start using my Azure Active Directory or my Active Directory that I've migrated over, however I'm doing it? It's with run command and some of these commandlets. So the way it works is you decide what you're trying to do. There's one here for creating a new or adding a new identity. You click there, you supply some information, and it does that privilege execution that we were talking about. Doing identity config in vCenter Server is typically part of the administrator role, at least in earlier versions before vSphere 8.0 U2. And so that's why we broker that, right? It's basically taking that thing that otherwise would require administrator and give you a path to do it without that high level access. There's a bunch of other things in here, and this is what I was mentioning. We're constantly adding to this. And you'll note here that there's another module for a partner. So as I was discussing, it's something that we use for partner integration like ISVs, and it's also something that we use to allow you to perform these sort of day two operations.
Hey, Joe, I really want to highlight the interaction between us in the field and customers and you and the product group here, in that, as we get customers who are asking for specific features or integrations, that this is really highlights, that back and forth interaction between the product group and the field so that we can be agile in meeting our customers' needs. And so we really appreciate folks like Joe working on the product who are listening to us in the field and our customers and able to relatively quickly react and provide new functionality within the platform.
Yeah, we couldn't do it without folks like you, Scott. So we appreciate the partnership. And now that you mention it, actually, there's a couple on the screen here that is related to lifecycle and lifecycle of identity management that came through customer requests from folks like Scott working with our customers. And it was basically like, okay, I created an identity, but if I'm, hopefully using LDAPs, we certainly recommend that. Those certificates are only good for so long. So what happens when it expires? Well, I have to replace the certificate, right? But that's a different workflow than just adding something. Or I use an identity in Active Directory that is what allows vCenter Server to authenticate back to Active Directory and validate that login attempt. Sometimes there's password policies that might expire that password for the identity that is integrating between those. So it's another lifecycle thing where I might need to update the password or certificate. And so these are things that came from customer requests where you had to remove it and re-add it, and there was friction in that workflow. And so we're able to add these capabilities, and there's even more now, but we're constantly doing this through the partnership that Scott mentioned. The blip at the bottom here is just to say that, to tie back to the earlier points we were making, is you go to run command, you configure your identity, and then if we're designing for security and you want to bring custom roles to your environment, then once I've done the identity integration, then I just follow the same pattern that I've always used, as mentioned before, for doing custom roles inside of vCenter Server, because we realize it's important for you to be able to have that flexibility for your customers. And with that, I'll hand back over to Scott to tell us more about designing for security.
Thanks, Joe. One of the great things about Azure VMware Solution is that it sits within the entire Azure product stack. There's over 250 different services within Azure, and a large amount of them are dedicated to security and allowing you to secure your workloads better. Now, but to understand that, we really kind of understand how Azure VMware Solution works, and we have, what we a shared responsibility matrix. So the boxes in blue represent Microsoft's responsibility. So we're going to take care of the physical infrastructure, physical security, the Azure AVS portal, hardware failures, EXI host, deployment lifecycle configuration. And Joe talked about a lot of those things already. We take care of the host patching and, rotating patched hosts in and out. And then with NSXT, we control the deployment and lifecycle, but we allow you to control the configuration along with identity management, vCenter, and vSAN. Now, you as the customer are in complete control of the virtual machines, the guest OSs, the applications on those VMs, and are responsible for patching them and keeping them up to date with the current security standards. So when we have a solution like AVS in the cloud, it is really much a partnership, right? So we have Joe and the rest of the great AVS team on the back end working to keep all the items in blue working seamlessly and securely. But then there's a part for you as the customer in gray that you have the responsibility for. The good news is that we have a lot of solutions to help you navigate this, as well as third-party solutions out there. So Microsoft today is all about partners, but we also have great first-party solutions. And you as the customer really get to benefit from that because you get to choose. So one of the first things I like to highlight is that we have our hybrid management tool, Arc, which has now works with VMware vSphere. So it allows you to integrate and manage VMware VMs at scale, whether those VMs are on premises or in Azure VMware Solution. So with Azure Arc, we can really give you access to those virtual machines as if they were native Azure virtual machines and really extend the management and control and security capabilities with them. So one of those is comprehensive patching with Azure Update Manager. Now you're saying, hey, I'm not using Azure Update Manager today. I'm using SCCM or MECM or a third-party product. Guess what? You can keep using those products to patch your VMs today. You do not have to change. But we are also making new and modern cloud-native tools available to you as well to patch Windows and Linux servers in Azure or not in Azure with Azure Arc. And this includes Azure VMware Solution. So with Azure Update Manager, we can actually centralize your patch management for all of your VMs, whether they're in a third-party cloud, Azure VMware Solution, VMware on-premises, Hyper-V on-premises, and native Azure into one solution. So you can see where your risks are, what you need to take action to patch and keep up to date, and schedule with automation, and then potentially if you need to do failover between regions. Again, we're bringing back that multi-region secure network architecture here so that you can patch and fail over between those regions. The other thing that we can do here is secure your extended support. So your Windows and SQL workloads that have hit that extended support, we can enable that with Arc, and that includes an Azure VMware solution. So currently today with Windows Server 2012 and SQL Server 2012, if you have applications that you're unable to update those platforms, right, we can automate the extended support and the updates that extended support provides in there, and again, do that seamlessly to help keep your platform secure, keep your workloads secure, regardless of where they live. So now, once we Arc enable a virtual machine, including an AVS, we can apply new tools to it. We can govern it with Azure policy. We can add Entra ID for security management to that. We can, again, scale and do inventory. We can do patch management and look at audit and enforcing OS settings. And you may be saying, hey, I've got a lot of that today, but is it across every single VM and every single platform that's possible? And that's where Arc really comes into play, because we're providing that unified platform. And I'm not going to say single pane of glass because that's used far too much, but we are giving you the ability to reach, configure, govern, and secure with modern cloud controls, virtual machines, regardless of where they live. And that includes Azure VMware Solution. So we're really wrapping AVS around with the broader Microsoft security ecosystem. Now, one of the key elements for this is deploying Defender for servers. So we can reduce your risk with contextually secure posture management. We can get compliance benchmarks. We can do vulnerability assessments, just-in-time VM control. We can block malware. And a lot of you are saying Microsoft using, Defender as my XDR tool. That's crazy. Well, a little company called Gartner came out with their Magic Quadrant in XDR, and guess who was in the top right corner? It was Defender for servers as part of our tool set. So, you can get the best tools out there as part of the platform to secure every single layer within here. So, and again, whether that VM lives on premises, in another cloud, or an Azure VMware solution, we can provide the same service to there. Now, when a VM is in AVS, though, again, we're surrounding it with our secure network capabilities, our firewalls, the WAF tools, the inspection. So again, every single layer is looked at and inspected, and we have our Defender for Cloud product out there to help you look at that, and that's our Defender Cloud Security Posture Management. So we can look at every single layer in the cloud, the network, the identity, again, all those pieces of zero trust, and we can audit it for best practices, for vulnerabilities, and we can pinpoint risks and highlight them for you so that you can take action to remediate them quickly, right? So one of the key benefits of being in the cloud versus on premises is we have complete visibility to every layer in the stack. Every bit coming into the network, every bit going out of the network, and we can help you with security around that. Security for storage, security for key vault, which you heard Joe talk about with the customer managed keys. We have security for the hypervisors. We have security for the virtual machines. And then all the settings around that. CSPM extends its audit capability to identity. So again, wherever your workload is at, we can look at it and help it keep secure. So part of this is really understanding any potential gaps in your compliance posture. I work in state and local government, and we really have a microcosm of every security type and compliance posture out there. We have healthcare, we have infrastructure, we have financial, we have criminal justice, we have financial data out there. Along with all of that, we can meet and exceed all of the highest security and compliance standards out there today. And we can automate audit and compliance across all of your virtual machines and all of your cloud settings as well, regardless of which cloud it's in. So whether your workload is in AVS or it's in native Azure or another cloud, or part of your workload is in AVS and part of your workload, the same workload, is in native Azure because you've been modernizing it, we can look at understanding your compliance and security posture across the board and help you get a grasp on it and really keep it secure in real time. And this is really going to help you through all of our tooling create a unified security operations platform, right? And so that we can utilize AI to help power the SOC. We can use XDR with Defender to defend it across workloads, whether that's SQL, virtual machines, storage. We have SIM protection with Sentinel, which we're going to talk about here, which Forrester just recently recognized as best in class. And we can reduce your exposure across your entire digital state. And we have threat intelligence. So, many of you are used to seeing our security products in modern work with like Office 365, but this extends through all of Azure as well. So as you migrate your platform, like Azure VMware Solution, into Azure, you could take advantage of all these tools and capabilities that are already there. So you remember at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about, hey, when you move your platform into the cloud, one of the key capabilities that you could take advantage of is all the other security tooling that's in the cloud. In fact, we were able to utilize all of the security tools inside of Azure to help a customer out recently. A major transportation agency migrated its train scheduling application into Azure via Azure VMware Solution. We were able to surround it with other security solutions like Azure Front Door with Web Application Firewall. And we were able to catch hack attempts against their platform that they hadn't previously seen and stop them dead in their tracks and provide intelligence for their SOC to be able to look out for new threats in the future. So again, that's just a simple example of how, the act of doing quote unquote lift and shift, which is often seen as not a great idea, can really help you improve your security by, again, surrounding every single aspect of your platform with security. Now, we talked about how Defender XDR can help secure your virtual machines and other workloads, but to gather all that data together, the immense amount of data that the cloud can provide you, we need a SIM tool to do that. And Microsoft has Sentinel, which was recently recognized by Forrester as best in class. So with Sentinel, we can scale the collection of data across on-premises, other clouds, all of our security tooling, Defender XDR, third-party security products, and put all that information into a correlation engine that's in Azure and can grow with the cloud. And that's going to allow you to utilize tools such as AI to help look for threats. That's where tools like Microsoft Copilot for Security come into play and help you sort through the immense amount of security information that's being thrown at you, highlight potential threats for your security personnel to authenticate and take action against. Now, we started off this conversation with the simple premise